The Dodgers spent more than $1 billion last offseason, and they won the World Series. They responded this offseason by spending even more money. The New York Mets spent $765 million on Juan Soto. The world of baseball says that teams like the Dodgers and the Mets are ruining baseball. But is that actually true? Does spending money and having huge payrolls actually translate to winning? Are teams with payrolls over $300 million like the Dodgers or the Mets ruining baseball and the competitive balance of the league? Last year, the Dodgers won the World Series, but had the fourth highest payroll in baseball, believe it or not. The previous year, the Rangers won the World Series, but also did not have the highest payroll in baseball. To find the last team to have the highest payroll in baseball and win the World Series, we have to go back to 2018, when the Boston Red Sox won it all. The next occurrence is the Yankees in 2009. This shows that having the number one payroll in baseball is not a guarantee to win the World Series. If we take a closer look at the top 5 payrolls in baseball, it becomes evident that money does not always equate to wins. Since 1993, excluding 1994, the champion has had a top 5 payroll 16 out of 31 times, or 51% of the time. Don't get me wrong, a 51% chance of winning the World Series sounds amazing, but spending enough to be in that group is a big investment. Winning the World Series is incredibly difficult, and even making it to the playoffs is a challenge. While we've established that having the highest payroll in baseball does not guarantee a World Series title, could we argue that simply reaching the playoffs might be enough to consider a season successful? In that case, is getting to the playoffs a valid justification for teams spending huge amounts of money? One example that highlights the potential benefits of high payrolls is the 1999 season, when 7 out of the 8 playoff teams ranked in the top 10 in payroll. The Yankees won the World Series against the Atlanta Braves, who defeated the only team not in the top 10 in payroll to make the playoffs, the Houston Astros. The worst year for top 10 spenders was 2020, where only 31% of the top 10 payrolls made the playoffs. With the expanded playoffs, one would think that number would be high, but this shows that the pandemic season was difficult in its own way. On more normal seasons, the lowest percentage of teams with a top 10 payroll in baseball to make the playoffs was 38% in 2000, 06, and 2011. Since 1993, only 53% of the teams with top 10 payrolls in a given season have made the playoffs. Another key indicator of payroll influence is regular season performance. Since 1993, the team with the best regular season record has had a payroll below league average only 3 times, in 1994, 2000, and 2012. Meanwhile, when looking at the worst teams in each season, they have only had a payroll above league average 4 times, 1993, 04, 2017, and 2018. Furthermore, no team with the best record in baseball has ever had a lower payroll than the worst team in the league in any given season. This further supports the argument that while high payrolls don't guarantee championships, they do play a significant role in ensuring regular season success. Now, what about the other side of the ball? The teams that have managed to have a low payroll and still attain success. How many teams have done the impossible and won a World Series with the top 5 payroll in baseball? The answer is none. What about in the bottom 10 payrolls in baseball? Only one team, the 2003 Miami Marlins. Teams in the bottom 5 of payrolls are not necessarily focused on winning the World Series. For some, success might even mean losing more games to secure a higher draft pick. After all, making the playoffs could be seen as a failure if it means missing out on future talent. However, for the purposes of this research, making the playoffs will still be considered a success. If a team can reach the playoffs without spending much, that in itself can be a significant achievement. So how are the numbers looking? Since 1993, only 17% of teams with the bottom 10 payroll in baseball have made the playoffs. In fact, there have been several years, like 04, 05, and 06, where no teams with a bottom 10 payroll made the playoffs. This means that for 3 postseasons, no team with a bottom 10 payroll made it. But that has since changed. Since the 2016 season, when no team with the bottom 10 payroll make the playoffs, there has been at least one such team to make the playoffs in each postseason, with a record 5 bottom 10 payroll teams making it to the playoffs in 2024. In 2020, when the playoff field was expanded to 16 teams due to the pandemic, and again in 2022, when the format was adjusted to include 12 teams, bottom payroll teams have been increasingly common in the postseason. These changes to the playoff structure have provided more opportunities for underfunded teams to compete, allowing them to sneak into the playoffs despite their financial shortcomings. The expanded postseason not only increases the number of teams in contention, but also creates a more dynamic race for playoff spots. What about the middle tier teams? Those that may not have the financial power to compete with the likes of the Dodgers and the Mets, but still strive to remain competitive with a reasonable payroll. Teams that do not want to tank and have super low payroll, but want to remain in the mix. Teams with payrolls in the middle ranges, 11 through 20, have won the World Series 9 out of 31 times since 1993, 29% of the time. If we divide the league into thirds, we see that bottom 10 payrolls have won just 3% of the time, the 03 Marlins being the only one team. Teams in the middle 10 have won 29% of the time, and teams with a top 10 payroll have won 68% of the time. If we divide it even further into groups of 5, we see that the most successful group is the group of the top 5 payrolls, having won 16 times. Teams in the 6 through 10 range have won 5 times. The next one, 11 through 15 have won 8 times. 16 through 20 have won once, and 21 through 25 once as well. The last one, the bottom 5 payrolls have no winners. Now going back to the middle payroll teams. In 1993, no team in the middle third made it to the playoffs. Since then, a team in the middle third has made it to the playoffs every season, with the peak being in 2006, when 5 out of the 8 teams were in the middle third of the payroll standing. 2024 was a bad year for middle-class teams, with only one, the San Diego Padres, a team that has a recent history of spending big on players like Tatis, Machado, and Bogaerts, but took a step back in spending in 2024. So what does this all mean? Is spending money the key to winning? For low-market teams that don't spend much, it is not the end of the road. Yes, winning a World Series without significant budget is difficult, but making it to the playoffs is an achievable goal. If these teams spend smartly and focus on player development, they can sneak into the postseason. With the new playoff format, there are more opportunities for such teams to get in. What concerns me, however, is that low payroll teams make the playoffs more frequent. We might see more teams opting not to spend. These teams could keep their payrolls low, make a profit, and if things go their way, claim they're competing, when in reality, they may just be tanking to earn more money for their wealthy owner and get better prospects while keeping their fans satisfied because they snuck into the playoffs. Then there is a middle ground. Teams that don't have financial power of the Dodgers, Yankees, or Mets, but are willing to spend enough to stay competitive and create chaos in the playoffs. This middle class of baseball has proven to be a sustainable way to compete, spending the right amount while maintaining a chance to win big. It might not be the best way to win, but there is success. However, despite the success of lower and middle payroll teams, the reality is that the odds still favor teams with top payroll. In Major League Baseball, where financial parity is not as pronounced as in other leagues, teams that spend more will have an advantage. While spending doesn't guarantee a championship, it undeniably places teams in a much stronger position to compete. In a system where resources aren't evenly distributed, it is crucial for bigger market teams to leverage their financial power in order to maximize their chances of success. It's not a perfect system. There are risks involved. Spending big and not winning is certainly a failure. But when you break it down, spending money remains the most reliable path to winning, giving teams a better chance to make the playoffs and ultimately compete for a title. Not spending and winning is a rare and surprising success, but for most, the best shot at victory comes from opening their wallet and securing top talent. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. See you next time.